Do you know what's probably even crazier than invading another country? Destroying a multi-billion-dollar project in the Baltic Sea, not only starting an environmental disaster, but also attacking the property of a NATO member in the waters of another NATO member. Yeah, that's like the state version of suicide. But nevertheless, someone actually did it. But more about that in a moment. Before, I wanted to take some time to quickly thank everyone who liked or subscribed. At this stage of the YouTube journey, this really means a lot to me, and I just wanted to tell you that. But enough sentimentalities, let's get the video started. So let's jump right in with a topic which is closely connected to the Russo-Ukrainian war. You may recall that the pipelines Nord Stream 1 and 2 used to deliver Russian gas and oil primarily to Germany. Then, a few weeks ago, they appeared to have some kind of leak in Russia, which unfortunately forced Russian authorities to stop the delivery of Russian gas and oil to Germany. Now, the weird thing is that happened just after the G7 states, which Germany is a member of, agreed on a price cap on Russian gas and oil due to obvious reasons. So they probably stopped providing Germany with these resources to get back at them for sanctioning one of Russia's top income streams. And even though they probably didn't have a leak back then, they sure do now. What? How I can be so sure? Well, someone apparently blew a big hole in these pipelines. Now, there are some weird things about that. Firstly, and this probably is the biggest mystery about this, these pipes lay under the Baltic Sea at depths of around 80 to 110 meters or 260 to 360 feet. So to pull off a stunt like this, one would need military trained divers and, according to an analysis of the damage, explosives as strong as 500 kilograms or half a ton of TNT. This kind of material also suggests that this mission was ordered and financed by a country, since most people don't have access to a team of military divers and half a ton of highly dangerous explosives. And secondly, there aren't many countries which would benefit from this. I mean, you can probably guess what this started. Everyone was blaming someone, mostly Russia. They say that the Kremlin tried to get a good reason not to deliver gas to anyone sanctioning Russia. But other facts indicate a whole other direction. On February 7th of this year, when the German Chancellor visited the US shortly before Russia invaded Ukraine, the American President Joe Biden said some interesting things. I quote, "If Russia invades, then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it." Then a reporter asked, "But how will you do that exactly, since the project is in Germany's control?" To which he simply responded, "I promise you, we will be able to do that." And yeah, if they didn't do that, that's some pretty poor phrasing from his side. The Danish military is now investigating the explosion since it occurred in Danish waters, and they're positive that they get to the ground of this terror attack. So until then, there will likely be the craziest speculations on who did it and why. But at the end, we can't know anything for sure until it comes from credible sources. But you can be assured that we'll tell you on World's News. Oh, and this is a great opportunity to tell you about our Twitter account. If you don't want to wait until the end of the week for important news like these, feel free to follow us on Twitter. Some news that we don't value as important enough to become a part of our next video are mentioned there, so you might want to check that out. But enough self-advertisement. There are more news about the Russo-Ukrainian war. Parts of Ukraine under control of Moscow-backed separatists now voted to join the Russian Federation. Well, this seems odd. I can recall that the majority of people there wanted to join Russia, especially not 87 to 98% as announced by the separatists. And yes, that's because they don't. But what would you do if you had to choose at gunpoint? In this series of staged referendums, the choice was basically between Russia and death. And even though it seems like they're not too different, most people did choose Russia. This was the case in the occupied territories of Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia. Most Ukrainian people obviously condemn this annexation, as does the West. Now, many people who have fled Ukraine or who are currently fighting for their country in other regions can't return home after the war because that's now Russia. I mean, they could, but they definitely won't like it. For Putin, this is a big day, as this might lower the waves in Russia itself. After he had started a draft program in Russia, many Russian people who don't want to die fighting for their leader's dreams started protesting against this recruitment. One young Russian man even went as far as killing the commander who wanted to recruit him. That's crazy. But how effective these who will join the Russian army will be is a whole other question, since Russia won't be able to train them. Even though Putin said that the Kremlin would only draft, and I quote, those who served in the armed forces and have certain military specialties, adding that students, single fathers and legislators are exempt, they are unlikely to hold up too good once they are in battle. But we'll see about that soon enough. Until then, let's have a look at some real problems which are actually worth our time and energy. Last week I spent almost the entire video explaining how exactly asteroids could kill us any day, and that NASA crashed a satellite into one to see whether that could save us one day. So if you don't know about that, I recommend you watch at least this explaining part from our last video. And this is the moment where you would watch the video if you haven't, just for your information. But anyways, as said, just changing Dimorphos' 12-hour orbit around Didymos by 10 minutes would have meant positive results for this experiment. Right now you can see the footage which the satellite streamed to NASA until the impact, which looked like this. With these pictures, NASA hopes to learn more about Dimorphos, like the material of it, or its density, surface and some other things. But two important things you should take from this are that we could probably change the direction of asteroids threatening Earth by crashing spacecrafts into them, and that this experiment did not change Dimorphos' or Didymos' orbit so they would threat Earth. And that's it. Some good news, some bad news, but overall an interesting week. So let's move on to something not quite as exciting as a mysterious leak in a gas pipeline, but still very interesting: this week's bonus fact. Today we talked about the Russian man killing a draft officer to avoid fighting in Ukraine. But in fact, maybe he just wanted to reduce his sentence. You see, in Russia, evading military service is penalized with 10 years imprisonment, while killing an active army commander is only penalized with an 8-year term. So you do the math. Which option is more attractive for someone who doesn't understand law? Because in this case, I'm sure that he will get at least 18 years combined for both, and a good bit of torture on top.